Health. We're going to go ahead and jump into some Q&A right now. I've got some, and I know this will lead us to more questions for everyone. And if anybody in the chat has questions and they would like, we are going to open up the chat to everyone. And we also would encourage anyone that has specific questions for our speakers to write those in the question and answer session, the Q&A, which is located at the bottom of your screen and says Q&A. So we're going to start off with a question for Dr. Bateman, and I'm sure we're going to have a lot more for you, but this was our first one. So Trey, yesterday you mentioned that there was a mortality risk for antipsychotic medications. And I just wondered if you could explain that a little bit more and maybe give us an example.
Sure. So this is, there's a black box warning on all antipsychotics for use in dementia. And the data has been there for decades now that suggests when you use antipsychotics in patients who have a diagnosis of dementia, statistically, you're more likely to see, if you follow 1,000 people, a higher number of those individuals receiving antipsychotics will die over the course of a period of time. For a long time, there was this sort of belief or trying to sort of explain it away by saying, well, sure, but people who are sicker get put on antipsychotics, right? I mean, they're psychotic. They have these symptoms. So they're more likely to be sicker, and therefore that may be what's explaining. And it turns out that's really probably not what's going on. There's been some really excellent work where people have controlled for how sick, how frail people are at the time they start antipsychotics. And even controlling for that, there's an increased risk of death from this. It's thought to be due to cardiac, probably mostly cardiac issues. Antipsychotics can affect the conduction of the heart. Some are more, some have worse offenders than others. But there is an effect across all of them. The ones that seem to have the lowest risk are Seroquel and the newer one, pimavanserin, also has a fairly low risk. The closer you get to the old antipsychotics, like Haldol, for instance, that risk goes up quite a bit. And so the reason that I tell patients that is because I think it's important they understand that this is a risk that we need to talk about and accept if we're going to use these drugs. We try to use, and I always tell all my patients that I'm trying to use the lowest dose possible for the shortest amount of time possible. So I work in situations where I'm reviewing instances of nursing home care. And one of the things that we do very, very well in at least the VA nursing home that I spend time working with is we constantly ask, okay, we've been on this antipsychotic for how long? We need to be trying to reduce the dose. And there's regulations in place that require you to do that in nursing homes. But I do the same thing with my clinic patients. I try to reduce those drugs, and sometimes we can, sometimes we can't. But.
Okay, and there is a list called the Beers list, BEERS, I believe. Do you recommend that caregivers look at that or ask their doctors about that list?
Absolutely. I would. I think it's probably helpful to familiarize yourself with it. It's a fairly straightforward list, and the Beers list is essentially a list of medications that can be concerning in older adults, and that sort of goes double for older adults with dementia. What I will say is that this does circle back to this issue of risk versus benefit. You can't view the list in sort of this concrete fashion and go, well, it's on the beers list, so we're done there. If you do, there's going to be very little to manage certain behavioral symptoms.
Okay, great. Thank you. We are getting a lot of very specific medication questions. We're going to switch back and forth between questions for our different speakers. So everybody, if you are asking a question, we may not get to your specific question. We'll try and cover everything we can. Just bear with us. So I had an interesting question for any of you that wants to answer. Do people with dementia lose the ability to feel joy? Pat, you look like you want to jump in there. Tell us what you think.
No. They do not lose their ability to feel joy, in my experience. And we are basically the people kind of responsible for trying to make that happen in a way that's meaningful to them. John was laughing. I'm not talking about all the time. These are moments of joy. Remember the key word, moments of joy? I don't mean they're happy all the time, but John very much responded so well to certain individuals. When our children would come to visit, it was like a light bulb turned on inside of him. He was clearly full of joy. So I think we need to always assume, like Dan Kaufer was saying, preserve personhood. That there is that person inside, deep inside there, keep trying to reach in for joy, even if they can't give you the reaction that you want that will make you feel better. I'd say keep going for that.
Thank you. Helen?
Yeah, I think one of the things you need to remember is that sometimes they can't express it. The facial expressions won't show up, but the feeling can still be there inside. And so that's important to know.
That's a really good point, and it's one of the things yesterday when I tried to make the point about apathy versus depression, or versus even there's another symptom that someone can have where they literally just cannot modulate their voice in a way to express the emotion in their voice. Sometimes you have to rely a little bit more on the literal words. If somebody tells you that they're enjoying themselves and they sound sort of flat, it may be that they truly are enjoying themselves. They just can't make their voice sound the way you expect it to.
And regarding that, Dr. Bateman and everyone else, could you talk a little bit about apathy in dementia? I think sometimes that there's a question about, is the person just having a flat effect, or are they not feeling that?
So apathy is sort of at its core really a disorder of motivation, and this suffers from the problem that a lot of these behavioral symptoms do is we all use the term apathy in our day-to-day life, and we think we know what it means because we'll say, oh, they're apathetic, but we're attributing a conscious sort of decision to that in some ways, right? Like we refer to people who are apathetic about life, and it's important to recognize that this is truly a neurological symptom. It's because of injury to the brain in parts of the brain that are fundamental for motivating behavior and motivating action in a very real way. Sometimes it's helpful to understand what the extreme end of the spectrum is. There are disorders in neurology that cause severe injury to the frontal lobes of the brain up here, and you can see something called akinetic mutism, which literally means someone does not move or speak, and that's from injury to the brain. So you can see these much subtler forms of this where people just want to, they don't have any get up and go. They just want to sit there. And sometimes the biggest problem that I have in clinic is the person who's apathetic is fine with it. They're not upset. Mm-hmm. They may not be experiencing any distress, but the person there with them just wants them to get up and go. And sometimes it's a balance between how much we can do versus how much you have to learn to accept and retool your own expectations.
May I say something about this? Because this could be a game changer for a few people out there. This is the caveat. When you've seen one dementia patient, you've seen one dementia patient. So I'm not saying that this happens and works for everybody, but we had that at our house big time. That was a big symptom that John had, was apathy, just no social interaction, just didn't particularly want to do anything. What really made the difference for John was he did receive the cholinesterase inhibitor, Exelon, rivastigmine is the generic name, and he received that in patch form. And then a few months later, somewhere between a half a year and a year, Dr. Kaufer added Namenda. And when he added Namenda to the Exelon, John's cheeks got pink, his eyes got brighter blue. He said he felt there was a fog that's lifted. He's socially engaged with us again. It's like he almost woke up. Now, he wasn't able to go back to the law practice. He wasn't able to do everything he could do before, but that really did seem to address it. And the way I explain this to caregivers is that the Exelon was working on the acetylcholine, that you saw that lovely cartoon drawing of the brain that Dr. Bateman added the other day. And that helped with the acetylcholine, and the Namenda helped with the glutamate, which is another neurotransmitter. So what you had, I described that as two armies fighting the monster in the middle. And for John, what that did was that combination lifted him up and brought him out of the apathy for years, literally for years. And so that's something that's one of those pivotal questions you might ask if your loved one's already on a cholinesterase inhibitor like Aricept or Exelon. Then could Namenda be added? Could we at least try it? And that's an experiment that may work for you. I pray it works for you the way it worked for us.
Thank you, Pat. And I think you're exactly right. It's great to ask those questions of doctors and to try those different things. And then also to keep in mind that sometimes that is going to just be a symptom or a happenstance with your loved one that, again, we have to adjust to, that perhaps we can't change, medication or otherwise. And so, like you said before, we have to change ourselves because they can't change. So we had a couple of questions regarding people losing the ability to use language. There was one question as to, is that specific to one type of dementia, or does that happen across the board in all types of dementia? And sort of how should we expect that to progress? Trey, do you want to kick us off there?
Sure. So early on, so I guess first I should say, if you just ask older adults about word finding difficulties, essentially it's universal. Everyone says, yep, got word finding difficulties. And I saw Helen raising her hand there. So thank you.
I'm 80.
That is an incredibly common experience. And so because of that, most folks that I see with almost any type of dementia will have some very mild language complaints like that, but it may not really be that pronounced. There are these primary progressive aphasias, PPAs, which are early, isolated, and quite severe impairments in language. Alzheimer's disease sort of classically begins with memory and goes on to involve language as the disease progresses. Lewy body dementia language is not a core symptom of it, but the thing that you've got to keep in mind is that because Lewy body dementia involves complex attention, arousal, and executive dysfunction, all of that can lead people to having trouble communicating. So while it may not be something that I would call a language disorder, I think it's driven by something else. Your day-to-day experience may be the language is really quite impaired because their communication is impaired.
Great, thank you. Helen, would you like to add anything to that about language loss?
I think that Trey described it pretty well. It's certainly because it happens much earlier. We see it happening earlier with LBD than we do with other dementias, I think. But and as an 80-year-old, I definitely experience it more than I like.
Thank you. Thank you. Pat, we have a question for you. The story that you told about your husband wanting to go out west with his caregiver. Do you think that was maybe a version of Capgras syndrome, or is that a more general thing that happens across dementias?
I guess I never associated it with Capgras because he wasn't directing toward me that I was an imposter of some sort. When I walked into that room and he said we didn't mean for it to happen, he knew he was directing that to his wife. So I don't think that particular one was Capgras. I think there might have been times when he had it kind of mildly, but I would just, if he would act like he didn't believe what I was saying or something, I'm not sure. Yeah, I would just many times use the techniques I've already talked about and just not dive into them. I would just want them to sort of just escape, leave the room. And a lot of times they would leave the room with me.
Helen, you chimed in there. Do you agree that's probably more general across dementias?
Oh, yeah, that wasn't Capgras because he recognized her. It was the usual sexual attraction to somebody, and lack of social mores. I mean, he didn't know anymore. He felt, so he did.
It was very delusional because there's no way. Another point here for those who are listening is one of the reasons I didn't have to think twice about it was I took care of the legal paperwork early, and I had the healthcare power of attorney and the power of attorney. I had the house in my name. I did all I wasn't worried about a 45-year-old walking away. And so I mean, there's
could he still walk anyway?
Yeah, he couldn't walk very far anyhow. And so, so some of that is doing things ahead of time so that you don't have to feel anxious in a certain situation.
So here's a question sort of segueing from that topic. How do you redirect someone living with dementia when there's really strong emotions involved? For example, maybe there's a really strong feeling of paranoia, or that someone is stealing from them, or even if it's regarding sex. We have those, someone has those really strong drives. Any suggestions you can make when it's hard to deter emotion? So speak to us a little bit about that.
I thought Pat did a good job on that.
But I think sometimes, though, people really do I can remember one caregiver in a forum many, many years ago talking about how her husband just followed her all around the house and was after her all the time, just being very demanding in this way. And insistent, and she just wasn't attracted to him anymore at this point. Let's face it. People get smelly and they're not sexually appealing to us in some ways. And so there's that reality within the caregiver that's very hard to deal with when you're feeling that pressure come at you. I think that is a very tough one. And that, if it's really intense, I think that's one that Trey referred to in his talk, where he said, if it really is intense, you can talk to the physician about, is there some medication that can help if this is just getting to be way too much. That's one of those times when he said, let me know when you feel like things are really getting to be very difficult. Trey, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I agree with all of that. One other thing I've seen this more in the hospital where, if for any of you who have had to deal with your loved ones having dementia and being in the hospital, that is often a nightmare in and of itself, because hospitals are not often set up to be dementia friendly places. And, you're asking somebody who's confused to stay in bed, don't get up, don't wander, don't do these things. And I've seen behavior escalate in a matter of 30 seconds. And oftentimes, and again, this is sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't, but I've been able to go into the bedside and you've got somebody sort of standing over top of them, arms crossed, looking angry, and telling me not to go. You're gonna get hit, and I say, well, just back up. Let's, and there is, especially in Alzheimer's disease, there's a process called emotional contagion, and you guys all touched on this practically in your talk, where behavior amplifies behavior, emotions amplify emotions. So if you reflect anger, it's going to get reflected back at you, but it's going to get magnified. And so sometimes when somebody's really angry, and this is so hard to do when it's someone you love and it's in your house and it's in your space, but to be able to just, in a way that would seem to not make any sense to somebody observing it, just change the emotion and change the topic. I've seen people yelling and ready to swing. And when you just say, hey, can you come over here and help me with something? I really need your help on this over here. And it's literally just like a switch sometimes. It doesn't always work, but it's sort of in the moment problem solving. If you can try to employ those types of principles, you keep doing it enough and it's going to work more often than not.
Yes.
Thank you. We have had some questions about behaviors that tend to happen in the early evening hours. Some people call this sundowning. Those sundowning behaviors we know can happen at any time of day, depending on the person and their schedule. Would anybody like to talk a little bit about prevention versus management of sundowning behaviors? What can we do to be proactive to help families deal with those behaviors that tend to happen every evening or in the evenings quite often? Pat, you're smiling.
I just read an article. Oh, I can't remember his name. He's fantastic. He has his own website. He has early onset Alzheimer's. Oh, and I wish I could remember his name. But he was talking about this, and he was like, people, he's still very able to articulate what it's like to have dementia, to be inside of the disease. And he said, people stop talking about sundowning. He said, it's not because of the light. He said, we're tired, and you're tired. And I thought, bingo. So what I would try to do, he said, turning on a lamp's not going to make a difference, even though I would recommend changing lighting sometimes. I disagreed with him there a little bit. But what I thought when he was, Rick Phelps, that's his name. If you look up Rick Phelps, he's fantastic. And so anyhow, Rick, what I would say is, based on what Rick is saying, is when they take a nap in the afternoon, take a nap too. Get your own, grab the rest when you can get it. Get yourself and them an afternoon snack, something that's going to keep your energy up. Try to keep that blood sugar level, that rest level. Do what you need to do to compensate. One of the things, John had sleep issues up the wazoo. God, you name it, he had it. And he did a lot of sleeping. And I would just use that. It was like, okay, I'm in dementia land, like Helen said. I'm in dementia land. That means there is no day and night sometimes. So if John is down, I'm going down too. And I'm going to try to keep that blood sugar going, no matter. And now, do we have a routine? Yes. Can we still have a snack? Absolutely. Things, practical, simple things like that sometimes can be game changers. It's just something worth trying.
Thank you. Anybody else want to add anything to that? We just had a comment from Ginger that said for sundown she uses light therapy and cueing triggers, and I would agree with her. If behaviors tend to happen at the same time every day and they turn into something that's predictable, then we can act before that behavior happens to head it off, to flip the switch, as Dr. Bateman said. So if we know that at 4 o'clock every day somebody's going to start moving the furniture, then at 3:30 we need to get them involved in an activity that uses some of that extra energy that they have to burn it off in a way that isn't hurtful for them. So we can use those in productive ways instead of destructive ways. Okay, Pat, you mentioned sleeping a little bit, and we've had some comments about people that say that perhaps their loved one has really slept a lot during the day, or they go to bed very early and then they wake up in the middle of the night and think it's time to get up. Does anybody have any suggestions for maybe how we can avoid those situations? I know we've also had some people that have their days and nights switched. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that.
Well, see, I was not working, so I was at home all the time. And so I did the simplest thing, which was, like I said, when he rested, I rested. Now, what happened in general when he started getting up to 6 and 7 times at night and that kind of thing, I did go to Dr. Kaufer and ask for medication to help. He was going to the bathroom a lot at night, so that would break that pattern. But I guess my philosophy might be wrong. It may really be wrong. But my thought was, you know what? I do know this about the brain. I know that when we sleep, the brain is trying to cleanse itself out. There's a garbage disposal system in the brain that's working when we sleep. I saw that and viewed that John's brain was desperately, because he slept a lot, desperately trying to clean itself out. And I just let him sleep a lot. And when I finally got burned out, because there was not enough, I was getting up too much in the middle of the night, that's when I had to bring in people to spend the night at our house with him. And I made the mistake of putting that off a little too long, and John went into a facility for 3 months. And then I brought him back out and brought him home with 24/7 care, because in our community, it costs the same thing to have him there that it did to have him at home. And so I just kind of went with the flow. Now, Dr. Bateman may recommend more activity. I know sometimes people are bothered by that. I just decided this comes with the LBD package for some patients, is a lot of sleep. And so I tried to adjust my schedule to his as much as I could.
I agree with Pat. I don't see a problem, usually at least, with too much sleep, because like Pat says, the brain is just working really, really slow. Remember that car stuck in the mud and how much harder it is to clean that brain out. It just needs more sleep, because that's the only time it can really do that housekeeping.
Lewy body dementias are particularly sleep and arousal difficulties are really core to Lewy body dementia. You tend not to see the same type of just excessive daytime sleepiness in Alzheimer's disease, absent something else going on. Some patients with DLB will sleep 20 hours a day. And it's because the part of their brain that is degenerating is in part the sleep-wake circuitry in the brainstem. And so they truly do get stuck in a state where they can't wake up easily. We can try to treat it, but one thing that that's also worth saying is this comes up when people want me to treat daytime sleepiness and apathy and things like that. I always warn them, we can do it, and you may not like what happens when we do that, because sometimes trying to treat the apathy leads, I've made you not as apathetic, but you're impulsive and disinhibited, and now you have activity to do those impulsive and disinhibited things that can lead to more problems. And so it's just always worth that thinking about that balance and being aware that making one symptom go away may not be the right thing to do.
I love what one caregiver just said. I couldn't catch the whole thing and I didn't catch her name, but she said, "Don't say you weren't working." And boy, is she right. I don't think I've ever worked harder in my life. If you're doing this, believe me, you are working all the time. You are right.
So true. It's
24/7.
Full-time job.
Yeah.
So speaking of work, Pat, thank you for bringing that up. And you kind of mentioned this when you got help to come into your home when it got to be too much for you. Helen, let's kind of switch over to you for a minute, and then we'll hear from everybody else. But when should you really start to look at either getting help in your home or placing your loved one in some kind of care situation outside of the home? How do we know
you get
too much?
The minute you get the diagnosis, I'm not saying you should do it then, not at all. But that's when you need to start the research. You need to accept that sometime along that road, you're going to need help. And Pat said it. Almost every caregiver does the same thing. They wait too long. And remember, the caregiver's health is what's more important than anything else. And we forget that. We put so much effort into taking care of our loved one that we forget that we're our loved one's most important tool. And we don't take care of ourselves. It's just and a lot of people say, well, I can't afford to. Well, it's going to cost more if you die. And that's, I don't pull the punches. Pat said it. Caregivers tend to die way too often before their loved ones do.
Yes.
Ginger just said you cannot give from an empty cup.
Amen.
Right.
A really important point here that I see and deal with a lot in clinic is, getting help in the home is a position of privilege that a lot of folks really struggle with being able to afford and get.
Right.
The Dementia Alliance is wonderful in this regard and has resources to try to help individuals. But I think it's just important to acknowledge for anybody sitting in the audience going, "Oh, yeah, this sounds great, but I mean, it also sounds like a pipe dream." In some regards, you're not wrong. And that's a failure of our healthcare system in providing thoughtful, compassionate dementia care. It's not a failure on your part.
Right.
And I also want to give just a shout out to the Veterans Affairs Hospital in this regard. I take care of people at Wake and at the VA, and I don't want to litigate what the VA does and doesn't do well, but I'm here to tell you that I can take care of patients easier, better, with more resources at the VA 100% of the time. Every veteran gets 30 days of in-home or in-facility respite per year. Every veteran, regardless of their service connection, can get homemaker home health. And I have many patients who are getting 16 hours a week of in-home nursing aid care for the remainder of their disease at no cost to them. those things are a wish list for most people that I take care of in the civilian world.
And I believe, isn't that fairly recent? Wasn't there a law in the last few years past?
So now there's actually beyond that, and I mean this is worth saying too. You know what you're talking about, Pat, doing when you were taking care of your husband is it's unpaid caregiving, and you know I forget how many billions of dollars unpaid caregiving totals in the U.S. But now, so it was for post 9/11, but now it also includes Vietnam era and before veterans. If they have significant service connection to the VA, I can get the caregivers paid to care for their loved ones. And that is huge. But yeah, money doesn't make problems go away, but not having it makes them a lot worse. And so
yes,
it's really, you know, these things that the system just does a terrible job of, right? And we're even doing a study at Wake. It's a national study called DCare. And the entire point is basically to prove to Medicare that if they would just pay for this, we can improve outcomes.
Yes.
I can order as many useless MRIs every year as I want to, but I can't get you help in the home. And that's
what we really need.
Yep, that's a travesty.
So if I heard you right, because I want this repeated, the teacher wants to repeat it. I think I heard you say that there's even a benefit to pay the at-home caregiver for veterans who fall under a certain umbrella.
It is, yes, it is there are stipulations. You have to be 70% service connected, and you have to have served within a particular time frame, with the plan of expanding this to a larger time frame. But yes, the caregiving services at the VA do include the possibility of, I mean, frankly, getting a check for being a caregiver within very particular circumstances, and that's quite new.
My co-teacher at the Wake Forest Presbyterian Church Dementia Caregiver class, her dad lives close to Salisbury and is involved with the VA there. And she just found out, she was blown away by the help that her mother and her 90-something-year-old daddy, because he was a veteran, that he was getting this 16 hours a week, someone coming in at no cost to them. He was getting all kinds of equipment and services that he needed. And it was, she said, I was amazed. And I'm not sure that's being offered at every VA. Do you know if it is, Trey? Because that is a huge gift.
It is. So it's not specific to Salisbury. It's, I mean, your social worker, your primary care clinic social worker has to kind of know this. You know, I have, in my clinic at the VA, I have a social worker and a geriatric psychologist that I work with, you know, for patients. And so it's certainly something that we're able to get all of our patients, but it's not specific to us. And so I even have patients that I see at Wake who are veterans who will say, "Oh no, I don't go to the VA. That's not for me." And I have to tell them, "Yeah, okay, look, you don't have to go to the VA for your medical care if you don't want to, but for God's sakes, if you have the benefits, get signed up, because you are owed these services. And if they will pay for something that you don't have to come out of pocket for, you need to take advantage of that."
And am I correct in saying this happens in your home? You're not going into a facility for this. This is being brought to you in your home.
You can go to a facility for 30 days a year for respite. It's a little harder with COVID, but your respite care can be 30 days a month or 30 days a year of in-home care, which is basically 4 weeks worth of 40-hour-a-week care in the home, which is tremendous.
Yes.
So we have a lot of professionals and also non-professional caregivers who have used a variety of the services that you've been discussing. and everyone seems to be sharing their links in the chat, which is amazing and wonderful. Throughout the webinar, we have had a lot of questions asked of all of you, asked in the chat, and we just wanted to let everybody know that we are going to compile a lot of those questions, especially because we haven't been able to answer the majority of them here. They've been very specific. So we are going to compile those sort of Q&A, share them with our speakers, and if they're willing, which I believe they are, to give us some feedback on those, and then share those answers with all of you, our attendees, because we don't want you to feel like you're left out of there. There are a lot of resources that we have made available to all of our attendees. There are Facebook groups, there are telephone groups, there are online groups and offline groups, and support groups and resources, and more than we can name. And so many of our attendees seem to be very early on in this dementia journey. They have a lot of questions about the specific disease types and what the symptoms are. We tried to make this webinar for everyone, and so we're trying to be very inclusive, though I know we could spend weeks on every different type of dementia. So for right now, I think what we're going to do is we're going to leave the chat and the Q&A open for a little bit. We're going to go ahead and pull Heather in here and say thank you so much to all of our wonderful speakers. We realize that we're leaving a little bit earlier than we thought we would today, but I do want to remind everyone that you have a link to our Zoom meeting that's going to start at 4:30 p.m. and that's Eastern Standard Time. And it's a meeting for everybody to come in. We're going to break you up into different rooms. You can chat about all these different topics and things, get to know each other more. We're going to invite our speakers to be there if they're able. And we're going to have a lot of other professionals in those rooms as well to answer questions. So Heather, I'm going to turn it over to you. But again, from me, thank you so much to all of our speakers. You've been such amazing, wonderful guests today.
Thank you, Lisa. I just echo you and your sentiments, Pat, Helen, Trey, Dr. Bateman. Thank you so very much. I also want to give a round of applause.
Okay. You can call me Trey.
Okay, Trey. I just want to give a round of applause to Lisa. She has been working the past few months around the clock, behind the scenes, to really put together this meaningful content. And so thank you to her for moderating that panel and for planning today. We could not do it without her and her guidance and support and learning Zoom. This has definitely been something that's been new for all of us. So again, thank you for being here today. Thank you for taking time out of your day. I hope you'll join us this afternoon where it's a little bit more casual and laid back, and be able to provide resources with one another. I think that's the biggest key, is getting plugged in with each other and creating that community. And so we're trying to do our best to do that through the technology, but I hope you'll join us at 4:30. And again, thank you to our speakers, thank you to our sponsors, and we appreciate all of you for being here and contributing in the conversation. So with that, I will say we are done, and we will hopefully see you at 4:30.